recording now so that we can post this video online so that anybody who's not present tonight will have all the information that we're giving. So make sure that you check in with your teammates to make sure that they watch the video. Add your questions into the Zoom group chat box to everyone so everyone can see what questions are coming up. In terms of what kinds of things you'll learn tonight, so we are not giving away any information about the course itself. For those of you who are new to this adventure racing thing, the course is really a surprise until you show up on either Saturday or Sunday to receive your race maps and the course booklets. So that means that tonight we're not going to be saying anything about you know, the number of legs in the course or how many miles or how many checkpoints or things like that. We're just going to be covering some of the background information, general rules, guidelines, things like that. A few other kind of strategy tips, I would say, but nothing that is kind of specific to what will happen during the race.
That said, if you're looking for mileage minimums and maximums, those are listed on the website, I believe under the race information tab. So if you're looking to know if what the minimum distance will take to get around the course, that's there. And then for all those gung-ho people out there looking to do every checkpoint, that's out there as well. And those are just basic guidelines. We didn't measure the course or anything. That's for triathletes.
So let me think. I think that's everything pre kind of detail stuff. So let's jump into what to expect. So I know we're very excited. A huge number of our racers this year are first-time adventure racers. So we're super excited to have you guys join us for your first race up in Maine. So we're going to start with some of just the kind of basics of what to expect for your race day. And everything that I'm saying here is both for the 3-hour race, which is our family and beginner race, and for the 8-hour kind of full event as well. And it applies to both Saturday and Sunday, so the races are going to be exactly the same across the days. So first thing is we need a prop. What you guys are going to be looking for out in the woods, which is a flag, a whole lot of flags that look like this. So these are called checkpoints. Or CPs, you'll see, we'll often refer to them as CPs, and the race booklet will as well. And the whole point of the race is to get to as many of these as you can in the amount of time that you have, so either 3 or 8 hours. Usually when you arrive at a checkpoint, you'll have we will have this year what's called a passport. It's basically a piece of paper that has kind of boxes for each checkpoint. Typically, you would use this punch to kind of create a little staple in the piece of paper of your passport to prove to us that you had been there. I don't know if that works, but yeah. This year we are going to do all of our checkpoints as touchless checkpoints. So instead of running up and punching the stapler that's there, you're going to see a tag that has a word on it. So you're going to need a pen, and that's in your mandatory gear. Make sure everybody has a pen that writes well.
Make sure you have 2 pens, because the first one definitely won't ever work well.
And make sure you write legibly, because you need to see the correct word in the correct space to know that you visited all of it. So that's your passport, is kind of us, sort of a way for us to check to see that you visited all of the checkpoints in the course. And when you arrive, you'll get a course booklet that will give you a whole bunch of information about what you're looking for. And in particular, each checkpoint can only be obtained by a specific mode of travel. So you'll see there will be a section that's a paddle section, and all those checkpoints can only be obtained by boat, or a biking section, and all those checkpoints can only be obtained by bike. You have to also obtain all of the checkpoints in the order of the stages listed. So there'll be like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So you cannot go backwards. Once you've completed stage 1, you have to move to stage 2 to stage 3. You can't go back from stage 3 to stage 2, for example. But within each stage, you can get those checkpoints in any order you want. So even though they might be listed in like alphabetical order or numerical order, you can get them within any order. And this is all in your race booklet too, but Basically, just remember stages have to be in order, but the checkpoints within each stage can be obtained in any order that you want. This is a cardinal rule of adventure racing. All teams must stay together. So we have some solo racers, which that's no problem for them. But for anybody who's racing with multiple people on a team, you have to stay within 100 feet and or visual contact of your team members at all times. I should say Cliff's going to be jumping out. We have a 3-year-old who's trying to fall asleep right now, so he might be on that situation. So yes, you have to stay together, visual contact at all times and within 100 feet. And that also means that when you get to each checkpoint, make sure that each team member, travels to the checkpoint. So you can't like send a person out to go grab the checkpoint flag while the rest of the team is traveling somewhere else. Good question from Kurt here. Can you skip a checkpoint and move on to the next stage? Absolutely. So what you can do in this course is basically we have a bunch of stages. And at the end of each stage, you're going to travel to what's called a transition area or a TA. And at the transition area, you're going to transition to the next mode of travel. So like maybe you were on your bikes and you're going to be transitioning to paddle. All of the TAs are mandatory, so you have to travel to each of those transition areas. All of the checkpoints are optional. What you will see is that for some, and this is particularly for the 8-hour race, we'll have some sections where we'll say, in order to go on to the next section, you have to get at least 2 checkpoints. So they can be any 2 checkpoints, and you can certainly skip all of the other, 8 checkpoints that were on the stage, but you have to get at least 2. Again, that will all be noted in your race booklet, but basically that means that for both races, there's a lot of optional checkpoints out there. So in particular, if you're really frustrated and you're not finding a checkpoint, you can weigh your pros and cons, but at some point you might have to cut your losses and move on to the next one, and that's okay.
And the way we've designed this race is not to make the checkpoints impossible to find. There will be easily findable checkpoints. So if there's a minimum there, we're not trying to make it impossible for you. If you don't see the checkpoint, chances are you're in the wrong place. You may want to check your map again. But there'll be some more difficult checkpoints out there for sure for the more adventurous teams, the ones that are gung-ho to clear the course. But for those minimums, it should be easy enough for every team out there to hit those minimum points.
Just another note about transition areas. So when you get to the TA, you're going to come in as a team and check in immediately with a volunteer. So you'll say, announce your team name, that you're here checking in. They'll make a note that you arrived. We also need you to check out from the TA. So when your team is ready to leave, make sure that you're also just saying to the transition area staff, hey, we're heading out right now, and get verbal confirmation from them that they're ready for you to leave. That's just going to help us kind of track where people are on the race course. Let's see. So, right. So you have to obtain as many checkpoints as you can in the time that you have, and then come back to the finish area by the finish time. The thing's a little bit tricky this year is, again, because of COVID, we are doing a staggered start. So instead of, all 8-hour racers starting at 8 a.m., you'll have a wave that you're starting in. They'll be pretty close to each other, but just with a little bit of space between racers. So the sort of finish time is going to depend on your start time. So if you're in start wave number 15, for example, your start time would be 8:15 for the 8-hour race, or 11:15 for the 3-hour race. And your finish time would be 4:15 for the 8-hour race, or 2:15 for the 3-hour race. So basically, whatever your time lag is at the start, depending on your start wave, we will give you that time at the end of the race so that you make sure you have your full 3 or 8 hours out on the course. Really important to keep track of time. Make sure that somebody, at least one, maybe multiple people, have a watch, because once you're late, if you come in after your finish time, you start to lose checkpoints. So for every 5 minutes late, you lose 1 checkpoint. So all those flags that you spent all that effort finding, you start to kind of lose the points that you obtained. So really make sure, above all else, that you come back in time to finish before the cutoff time.
and not just finish, but check in at the finish. So if you get to the finish, we'll put that as your time. But you do need to come to the volunteer or one of us at the finish and log that finish. If you just start drinking beer, we'll have no idea you're off the course, and that will be bad for your final score. So just make sure we've got your name, your team name, and your finish time down before you move on to the Dogtown Brewing beer and the burritos that we have waiting for you at the finish.
A couple questions coming in. Eric, we'll talk about bike and paddle stuff in a moment. Jody, this is written all in the course booklet, so everybody should know everything basically that I'm saying right now is also in your race or your course booklet that you'll receive in the morning. The points you get for finishing on time are that you get to keep all the points that you found, so no extra points for finishing.
And the TAs are not worth points; they're just mandatory. So sorry, you don't get a bonus checkpoint just for getting to the TA. You got to go out and find them. But the good news is you don't get disqualified.
Let's see. So the team that collects the most points in each race will be the winning team. In the event of a tie, like say there are, I don't know, 30 checkpoints total, and 2 teams have 30 checkpoints, the team who did it faster, whoever arrived first, will be the winning team. We do that kind of rolling down.
And I did just say disqualified, but what I meant was ranked lower than teams that do the full course. No one's going to be disqualified unless you do something that breaks the rules egregiously. But if you can't get to a mandatory TA and you still do some of the course, you'll still have a ranked team. It'll just be below all the teams that did all the TAs, and then below teams that did TAs plus checkpoints.
Let's see.
Yes. The answer to that is you can
read
finish.
The question.
Sorry. John Carter asks, if you're doing the 8-hour race, and this is for the 3-hour as well, can you choose to stop before the 8 hours if you wish? This is a really good strategy. Plan to be back to the finish line with a buffer. Don't plan to be right there at the 8 hours, or else chances are you'll go over. Plan to be conservative is something we learned as racers the hard way. Definitely leave some time on the clock. And if you want to finish after an hour, if you want to finish after 3 hours, that's fine. We may not have the burritos ready for you yet, but you can wait for them with us.
Yeah, really, as long as you get yourself back to the finish line, you are an official finisher. So you can finish anytime. A couple other just general rules. So no GPS allowed. So if you want to track yourself for the race, we have in the past, I think this is fine to do, allowed people to, like, say you have a Garmin watch or something, like start it and put it, bury it in your backpack where you can't see it. And it'll track your GPS for the race. But what we don't want to see is anybody with a GPS like on their wrist or phones out looking at GPS. Your phone is a mandatory piece of gear. Every team must have a fully charged cell phone. And the cell phone coverage isn't bad actually for most of the race course. But that is only for emergencies. That's not for checking your location on Google Maps or whatever.
We highly, highly recommend you waterproof those cell phones. Put them in a couple Ziploc baggies or anything else that you know will keep those cell phones dry. We've lost a couple out on course in the past, so be careful about that.
Let's see, no littering, and just practicing leave no trace the entire time. We're really grateful to the Great Pond Mountain Conservation Trust. They are the host for our race. They've been fantastic. This is our 3rd year on their property. You'll love it. It's absolutely gorgeous if you haven't been there before. So please just respect their property with picking up after yourself. Just being careful. We're all like tearing off little granola bars and things, and just making sure that you're packing out all of the trash from that. And also respecting private property. You won't come across too much private property on this race course, but occasionally you will. So just being thoughtful about where you travel. If you withdraw from the race for any reason, say you've had enough, or you have a teammate that got injured or exhausted, you just need to speak to basically Cliff or I, either in person or over the phone. And our phone numbers will be on all of your race instructions. So just let us know that you are leaving the course and make sure that you've gotten confirmation that Cliff or I know about that. If you have one teammate who drops, you can continue on unofficially, or two teammates that drop. But basically, you can continue on, but your team will be unofficial at that point. All right, let's see. Why don't I move on to registration? I know there have been some other questions coming in that we haven't answered. Some of them are upcoming here. Keep the questions coming, and if we don't get all of them, we'll go back through and just make sure we answer them all at the end.
And FYI, we're trying to get by 9, so if anyone has any pressing engagements, we're trying to keep through this.
We'll try to not keep you too long. All right, so registration is at the Craig Brook Fish Hatchery in East Orland, Maine. The address for that is on our website. For the 8-hour racers, registration opens at 6. For 3-hour racers, it opens at 9:30. We will be there even a little bit earlier than 6 to start parking cars and things. We really recommend getting there with, really as much time as you can, because as soon as you arrive and your team is present, we can give you your maps. And the course booklet. So you can start looking it over, planning your route, seeing what your day is going to look like. At minimum, make sure you're there an hour before race start. But more is probably going to be something you appreciate. So when you arrive, we will give you your course instructions and maps. Take the time to read those really carefully. Always better to read them when you're not racing around trying to find points. There will be no water at the start area, and that's mostly to avoid lines, but also because we just don't have access to a whole ton of water right at the start area. So make sure that you come with all your water bladders and water bottles full and ready to go. We will have some water resupply available at the transition areas. We're going to ask everybody to use hand sanitizer. We'll have lots of hand sanitizer around, but use that before you access the water.
And the start is right on Alamutic Lake, so if you really screw up and forget water, it's a really nice water source in the
That is
ditch,
true.
so you can purify that and have it to begin with.
That is true. Your bikes and your paddle gear. If you don't have to bring your own paddle gear. For both 3 and 8-hour racers, we are providing PFDs and paddles. But if you have a paddle that you love or a PFD that you love, you're welcome to bring those. We'll just ask you to bundle those together. And there will be a place to stage those within a short walk from the start area. We'll let you know where that is at registration. Similar for your bikes, those should be, and this is just for the 8-hour racers, you should have your bikes ready to go, ready to ride, helmets and shoes and everything ready. I realized that we forgot to put in the mandatory gear list flashing red taillights. That was just an oversight on my part. So please, if you have a flashing red light, attach that to the back of your bike for especially any road riding that you might be doing. If you don't have one, go ahead and just, as long as you've got some red reflective, those little reflective lights or whatever on your bike, that would be fine. And I'll just address, there was a question in the chat about maps. So we will be providing you with all the maps that you can use for the event. You can't bring any supplemental maps of the area. So we will provide you everything that you need, and you can't use anything else.
Just to make it fair.
Yes, exactly. Let's see, at your registration time, you'll also find out your starting wave number. The waves they're just gonna be 2 minutes apart, 3 teams per wave, so it's not gonna take us all that long to get everybody started. But it's just a way to spread people out a little bit at the start and at the early part of the race. And so we'll ask you to, when you register, we'll tell you what time your registration is. And then you can make sure that you're at the start area at least 10 minutes before your start. But just give kind of a wide space to the start area. That's, of course, the start area is going to be where we're most crowded with each other. So really at all times in the parking, registration, and start areas, we'll ask everyone to have their maps. Let's see, maps that we will be giving you. So all of our maps and other race materials, including passports, are going to be printed on waterproof paper. That said, the ink is not waterproof, and waterproof paper is sort of water resistant. Over time, it will sort of fall apart. So definitely bring some kind of way to waterproof your maps. It can be as simple as a Ziploc bag, just something to make sure that your maps are protected, especially when you're paddling. For the 3-hour race, we will be getting a single, very large 11 by 17 USGS topo map. All of the trails will be marked on there that you need, all the checkpoints, things like that. I believe the scale of that is 1 to 12,500 feet. So it's pretty zoomed in. For the 8-hour race, you are going to be getting 3 maps at the race start of varying sizes from 1 to 10,000 to 1 to 24,000 scale. Also USGS topo maps. And you'll be getting a 4th map somewhere on the course. So you will have 3 maps at the start, and then you'll get a 4th map somewhere kind of as a surprise. You'll see it in the race instructions, but a surprise map later on that you can't plan for. A good question about declination. So Maine, I believe the declination is 16 degrees, which is big. So you're going to want to, if you haven't heard of the word declination, I recommend Googling it now, because everyone's going to be needing to use some compass work in this race. And a lot of many compasses you can adjust the declination automatically, but otherwise basically your needle is going on the compass is going to be pulled 16 degrees west from true north. So you're going to want to just, that's on all of the that's on all of the race instructions or the race maps, the declination. But basically, you know, it's not a huge thing if you know relatively where you are, but if you're following a bearing for a long distance, 16 degrees is going to take you pretty far off of where you're trying to go.
Right now,
Yeah.
Say, I still don't understand declination. And for 3-hour racers, you will not
3-hour racers
need to worry about declination.
Yeah.
Most of the checkpoints are very close to trails, if not on trails. For the 8 hours, only a few points you may need declination. I will tell you, probably most of the advanced teams racing this race probably won't factor in declination because it's much more important to be on the maps and follow contours and the elevation, topo lines, than declination. So don't freak out about it. We'll have a little key on the map that'll show you that this is magnetic north and this is where your compass is going to be pulled to.
Or true north.
Right, true north and magnetic north, rather. So this is true north and this is magnetic north. See, I told you I didn't know about it.
Basically, if you're a 3-hour racer, just skip this. You don't need this. Yeah. But for the 8-hour racers, you might want to just Google what declination is. It's interesting.
The much bigger thing is, if you've ever gone for a hike in the woods and followed a trail map, that's the skill you're going to use.
Yes. Let's see, a good question from Mark. Are all the trails marked on the maps? The vast majority of trails are marked on the maps. We have tried really, really hard to track down all the trails. Anybody who's hiked in the woods in Maine will know that there's a lot of just old logging roads and random snowmobile trails that seem to pop up each year. So we have done our very best to mark all of those and really all the ones that you're going to encounter. That said, especially there's a section in the 8-hour course where you'll find yourself deep in the woods if you choose to go for those checkpoints. You may encounter some trails that look like a trail and peter out after 20 feet. I can guarantee you we didn't mark those. So anything that is a maintained trail is marked on your map, but sometimes you might encounter little like old logging paths or deer tracks or moose tracks. Actually, we saw some moose on course a month ago when we were up there. So you'll have to just be on your toes for that one. I think that's everything I was going to say about maps.
Did you tell about that one?
Yep. Let's see, the start area is going to be right in front of the Craig Brook Fish Hatchery building. Like I said, please arrive about 10 minutes before your starting wave and just stand away from the starting area until your team is called. We did want to just provide a couple of strategy tips for everybody. For the vast majority of racers, both 3 and 8 hours, this course is not clearable, meaning that you will not visit all of those checkpoint flags that we spent hours and hours placing carefully in the woods for you. But that's kind of what the point is that you're going to try to get as many checkpoints as you possibly can. You set a course that's going to be challenging for teams that are very fast and experienced, and also really fun for teams who this is totally new to you, and maybe you're just doing this with your family as a day to get out in the woods. So because the course is not clearable for most teams, we invite you to think about what your team goals are for this race. Is it that you want to get as many checkpoints as you can, be as competitive as you can be? Is it that you love paddling and you're excited to have a day out on the water? Or like your team just got new bikes and managed to snag some bikes in the coronavirus bike shortage pandemic, and you really are excited to ride them. Think about how you want to spend your time and how that might inform what you want to do that day. So a couple of just kind of general strategy notes I think about. Paddling is probably going to be, for many teams, a slower mode of travel. Just as you're factoring in, if you want to go out there and get as many checkpoints as possible, know that the speed that you travel between 2 paddle points is certainly slower than two bike points, for example. For the trekking stages, you can guess that the checkpoints that are on a trail or very near a trail are going to be a lot easier to find than the ones that are off trail. The off trail points tend to be more challenging, especially in these woods. They are thick. If anybody's walked much off trail in Maine, the woods are super thick. They're beautiful. There are lots of fun things fun features to find. But just again, think about your time. How much time do you want to spend out there, knowing that those off-trail points are going to take a lot longer to find. We've had some questions about biking, what surfaces to expect for the 8-hour racers. So all 8-hour racers will be on, for sure, pavement and dirt roads. And that would, at least to get the sort of mandatory course. But there are also plenty of points to take you on some more exciting surfaces, including single track, rough double track, hike a bike where maybe you're not able to ride, but more of a kind of carry your bike and walk. So if you have multiple bikes, just take that into consideration. Basically, as an 8-hour racer, if you're trying to clear all the bike points, you're going to want something that can handle some rougher trail. Let's see, there's a few questions that have been coming in here about, we'll try to keep, if you're a family that is racing in 2 teams, we'll try to put you guys in the same wave. If for some reason we missed that, just let us know at check-in and we'll make sure we fix that. We aren't able to say the total number of checkpoints in either race, so that'll be a surprise that you discover on race day.
Between 1 and 1,000. Yeah. Even 1 and 100, I'll say. Less than 100.
I don't think we have more than like 150 actual flags. Can't be more.
There was another question about what the boats are. So it depends on the division you're in. But the boats are a combination of, most of them are going to be Old Town loons, which are like a canoe kayak hybrid. They're open cockpit. They have a little gunnel. They have a little protection from, you're not sit on top. You're in a boat, and you actually have to be pretty careful with those because they can swamp and they're very hard to right once they're swamped. So we'll have people some safety on the lake to make sure where you are paddling, which is going to be flat water, that you'll be okay. But there'll be kayak paddles, and you will, from the vast majority of teams, and for the vast majority of teams with 2 people or more, there'll be at least 1 tandem involved. And for solos, it'll be single. For odd teams, it'll be usually a tandem and a single. But Old Town loons, when in doubt, you can Google those and see what they look like. And we actually have some pictures on our Facebook page of the race last year. It's the same boats.
A few more questions here. How many checkpoints can you hit on a hybrid bike for the 8-hour race? You could hit definitely all the mandatory places you need to go, plus a couple optionals, but definitely not all of the bike points.
Without getting off your bike a lot.
Without having a pretty, you could always, yeah, you could take a bike anywhere. It's just, you might not be riding it. We also got a question about kinds of watches that are allowed. So you can absolutely use a watch that has an altimeter, especially a barometrically based altimeter, so one that is not based on GPS. Compass is also fine on your watch. Just make sure, again, that you're not wearing a GPS-based watch on your wrist. And let's see, the paddle, and Clip just described the boats, so they're not going to be standard sea kayaks. They're more kind of a lake kayak hybrid.
But sea kayak paddles are fine.
Yep, and they're a little wider than a sea kayak. So if you have a paddle with like an adjustable length, that probably is preferable. All right, in terms of just last things here, so general safety, make sure that you're bringing enough food and water, or purification. You have to have some kind of method of purifying, especially for the 8-hour race, that's mandatory on course. Basically, make sure that you're fueling yourself. When you are riding your bikes, you need to have your helmet on and your flashing lights on, if you have your flashing light. When you're paddling, you have to have your PFD on at all times. And when you're paddling, just make sure your cell phone is accessible in some way. So again, put it in some kind of a waterproofing container and make sure it's not hard to access while you're paddling. Also, if you haven't already, you need quickly to go on our website and check out the mandatory gear list. We have lots of information there. The 3-hour race is quite limited what you need to bring. The 8-hour race, make sure that you have all your mandatory gear planned for. You'll see there's some of that is noted as individual mandatory gear, meaning that at all times during the race, you have to have this gear. That includes your headlamp, even though it's daylight. That includes your rain jacket, even though hopefully it doesn't look like it's gonna rain. That's for safety reasons. You know, if by any chance you're out after dark or it does start to rain, or again, you're out after dark, you'll want these things to keep you or help you be found and keep you safe. So make sure you have everything on the mandatory gear list. Our numbers are on the race rules and course instructions, so you can call us, or if the call doesn't go through, text us at any time during your race.
But just because you send a text doesn't mean we got it. So if you're in a bad service area, text immediately, find better service and call.
Yeah. Can people take their phone out to take pictures?
I think it's fine.
I think it's fine too.
I mean, we're not going to have police all over the course, so please use the honor system. But we do want people to have photographic memories of this race. So
yes.
Yeah, we're going to have a professional photographer there who'll be taking some really nice photos, hopefully, of all of you guys at some point during the race. But yeah, you can take your phone out and take pictures, but please don't use it for navigation, unless you're truly lost and willing to disqualify yourself to save yourself.
Yeah, let's see. I've seen a couple of questions about changes in your team roster. Can you please, anybody who has a change, just email us because we'll address those individually. There's definitely some space for backpacks on the kayaks. Cutoff times, the only cutoff time is the finish time. So you'll want to manage your own time to make sure that you make it there with all the mandatory parts of the course covered. An Apple Watch, I think anything that has a step counter is also not allowed under kind of official adventure racing, like US adventure racing rules. So an Apple Watch would, I believe, oh yeah, would not actually be okay. Yeah, put it in your backpack. Let's see, the boats are big enough to one adult and 2 kids in a single lake, one of those lake kayaks. That might be a little crowded.
1 adult and 2 kids?
Depends on how big your kids
are. How well
are.
do you feed your kids?
Yeah, depends how big your kids are. If you are a family team and you're having some trouble with the boat situation that you have, just talk to we'll have a lot of staff at the waterfront helping all the families, especially getting your teams kind of situated in your boats. So don't hesitate to talk to us. We'll figure something out
For
to get you comfortable.
the 8-hour races are more subscribed than the 3-hour. So if you're in the 3-hour race, chances are we'll have extra boats for you that we can work something out if you don't feel comfortable going on the water. Nor will you be disqualified if you don't go out on the water. You'll just rank lower. So if you really don't feel safe, you don't have to go boating, but it is going to be pretty fun. I would say plan on getting wet if you're in the boats, and yeah. So.
But you won't be swimming.
No. No swimming, but yeah, assume your feet are going to get wet, and assume chances are, if there's any wind, that the spray is going to come off the paddles and get you wet. So yeah, just dress appropriately. It's going to be, in the 50s, chances are. So, if you get wet, chances are you're going to stay wet and a little cold.
Rain jackets tend to be really good for paddling. Water shoes, I think that really depends on what you'd like to do. The thing with water, depending on, we can't give you all the details except to say that, well, I guess water shoes, they could probably drop with their gear. I'm just thinking the more gear you bring, the more gear you have to carry with you for the rest of the race. Water shoes, I think that depends on your preference. For me, any shoe can be a water shoe because it gets wet and then it will dry eventually. Let me talk a little bit, Tivas.
Let's try and get through the try and get through the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, I'll look at the
we'll get to questions at the end.
Post-race, what to expect. We will have burritos or alternatives for people who are gluten-free, and we've gotten all of the kind of requests people have sent in. We have burritos. We will have local beer from Fogtown Brewery, who they are fantastic. If you are into beer at all, they have a really cool brew pub in Ellsworth that has nice outdoor seating and food trucks and things. So we highly recommend them.
Support them, they're great.
They're fantastic. We will also have soda and other non-alcoholic beverages for everyone to enjoy. So what we'll do is everything's going to be easy takeaway. So like grab your burrito, take it away. How big are the burritos? They will be big enough, Glenn, don't worry. Just take your food to kind of a socially distant location. There's lots of space around the waterfront, up by the fish hatchery, up on the kind of trails and things. So just spread out, find a place to sit with your team and enjoy. We typically do kind of a big awards ceremony, but we will not be doing that this year. Instead, what we'll do is we'll tally all the results and send out a post-race awards email. If your team wins an award, we will be mailing you, we'll have the awards for display at the race, but we'll be mailing people some little race plaques. We also are doing some raffle prizes, and we're going to pull those raffles actually before the race. So that when you check in, if you win a raffle prize, you will get that with when you register with your map.
Maple syrup from Sappound, backpacks from out there, tons of Belega socks, a bunch of really good prizes. You'll be getting a notification. We'll be sending out an email sometime this week if you won a prize. We'll probably just send out the whole prize list and the winners, so you can expect those in your prize pack when you pick up your maps at registration, so you can throw them right back in your car.
And t-shirts too.
And everyone gets a t-shirt who purchased one. So you'll get some goodies, hopefully, if you're lucky out there to start your race.
Let's see, I just want to finish by talking about our COVID protocols. Thank you everybody for just being so accommodating this year. Really, so our protocol is posted on our website. It also, we've linked to it in all the racer updates. And we also, in this most recent one, linked to a little form that we're asking people to just review, indicating that you have read our protocols and agree to follow them. So just a little kind of signature thing. Please do that before the race. Basically, this is why we can hold the race this year. These protocols that we put together are, I think they're pretty particular. They're all in accordance with Maine guidelines and CDC recommendations. And really, like I said, this is why we can do this, is because we are following these guidelines. Our race partners, including Great Pond Mountain, the Activity Shop, our boat provider, Craig Brook Fish Hatchery, they're all allowing us to use their lands and their materials because we have these protocols in place. So we will be enforcing them on course. Really it's the mask wearing. So anytime you're around people, anytime you are in the area, registration, start area, transition areas, finish area, restrooms, just make sure that you have the mask on. We'll also have a lot of hand sanitizer around too, but of course we know more and more about it. COVID is really spread, especially by droplets in the air. So just please help us be successful in pulling this off by following the protocols so that we can continue to have these people welcome us onto their lands. So really just make sure you have it ready. Like when you're racing out with your team in the woods, you don't need to have your mask on. But if you come into contact with any other teams, just make sure that you're throwing that on. Buffs do count as a face mask. So that's a reasonable way to go.
Please cover the nose.
Nose, yeah. And what we're going to do with the mask rule is that if we see your team, or if your team is reported as not wearing masks around other teams, you'll get a verbal warning. If it happens again, we have to disqualify teams for that. So just please be thoughtful about it. Hopefully this will be just a year of, this will be the last year of having to do this. And then we can go back to normal of just, coughing in each other's faces without a single care in the world.
We guarantee you adventure racers are the friendliest people you'll meet, typically, in a typical race. And there are still going to be some who will want to help you if you're lost. And, that is definitely a really cool part of the sport of teams helping each other out. So feel free to ask for help if you need it, but just do it from 6 feet away if you don't mind this year. And in the future, we'll hopefully this will all be a distant memory, and we can go back to our normal, overly friendly adventure racing selves. But yeah, just use caution at all times. The race is secondary to people's health, and that's always the case, but this year is especially so. So just try and keep at least 10% of your brain stuck in COVID mode, and just be really cautious and respectful and considerate of other people's space.
All right, I'm looking, this is a helpful link that Nicole posted. So a cloth face covering covers the nose and mouth, fits snugly, is secured with ties or earlobes. That's right, and it has multiple layers of fabric. So buffs are actually, I was reading about this, they're kind of questionable as face masks. And now that I'm seeing if the governor put that order out, we would say really to go with something that's a more like kind of traditional mask. Thank you, Nicole, for posting that.
Yeah, I would say please wear a traditional mask.
We will have a bunch of disposable ones. So if you're wanting an extra, feel free to, we've got a whole bunch of boxes of them, so we'll have them there. I think we've covered.
Okay, we are around for questions.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to stick around. We just don't want to keep the whole group of you here. So if you have to go, thank you so much for tuning in. We can't wait to see you and meet you all this weekend. We will be in touch by email with prizes and any other last minute information. Otherwise, we will see you this weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll stick around for questions if you've got any, or if we forgot to answer yours or didn't get to yours, we put it in the Q&A again and we'll get to it.
Yeah, I think in terms of the face mask questions that are coming in, I think we have to go really by our governor's orders. So covers nose and mouth, fits snugly, but is secured behind the ears, has multiple layers of, or behind the head, has multiple layers of fabric, and is machine washable, or I think the disposable ones are fine. So I would say, yeah, if you're in doubt, definitely bring kind of a traditional face mask.
There's been a couple of questions about, like, can I switch my team around? We're gonna have to look at those. We can't just tell you in a chat right now, but we will we'll take a look at your situation. If you don't mind just sending us an email, we're not gonna remember through this chat. If you don't mind going through the extra effort of just sending an email to strongmachinear@gmail.com to let us know what you're asking for. If you've already done it, we just haven't gotten to it today because we've been really busy. But
we do have day jobs. This is not our day job.
Yeah, this is what we do for fun. But yeah, so extra water, you won't be able to leave them at every TA, but you're certainly welcome to leave it at your car, and if you come back to your car, you can grab it there. Eco Challenge, we'd be happy to talk with you after the race.
We'll probably actually do, so our team, we had a team, we participated in the Eco Challenge race, so we had a team there that we were thinking we might do like a separate Zoom after the race where we can talk about Fiji.
One thing at a time.
If people want those stories, we'll tell them to you later.
Little whistle in the backpack does count as the whistle.
Yeah, so many backpacks have a built-in whistle. With a lot of, like, if you have an Osprey pack or an Out There pack or a Hyperlight, a lot of those will have, I think Ultimate Corrections has a little built-in whistle, and that would count for your mandatory gear.
How do you keep your stuff with your bikes? What kind of stuff are you planning on keeping with your bikes? You won't need too much
stuff. So with your bikes, like if you're basically, we will ask you at the start area, we'll give you a place to just kind of stage your stuff. We'll tell you where that is when you check in. So what you would do is just put your bike with your helmet. If you wear bike shoes, you can put that there. You can put water bottles on your bike, that's fine, or like some snacks, in your bike bag or whatever, that's fine.
The bike drop.
Kayak stuff, I would recommend if you do have your own kayak gear. Personally, I would say to bring some kind of a bag that bundles it together, your PFDs and your paddles, or anything else kayak gear related. I think a bag is probably going to be your best way to do that. But again, this is an 8-hour race, or 3 even, so you won't have too much stuff, so probably just a small bag would do it. You can leave water on your bikes, and we will also have some jugs of water around where the bikes are. There is no bike drop, so like some people may be familiar in races will ask people to like travel to another location and leave your bike there before the race. So for those, instead you don't need to go drive your bike anywhere. You're just going to actually have the bike at the start area, and we'll show you where you can put it.
Do people change outfits? Volunteers. Volunteers, thank you for sticking around this long. We will get you an email out.
Probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe Wednesday, but or who knows, maybe too late. Yeah. Depends how much cognitive functioning we have left for the day. Soon, volunteers will get some information really soon about their shifts.
And thank you, volunteers. And everyone should thank them during the race because volunteers are absolutely amazing. Do people change outfits? Glenn has an answer there. Glenn hasn't changed clothes since the last race, so he might not be the best person to ask. But
I'm still wearing those bike shorts.
He loves his bike shorts.
So the fast teams don't change clothes; they just go for it. Maybe they'll change bike shoes, but I know for our bunch of first races, we're not going to win, so we might as well be comfortable. So we change clothes. So really, what you want it's your preference.
You'll probably find that you want some layers, especially for the 8-hour race. It's going to be cold in the morning. And then, as you go through your race, you'll probably warm up quite a bit. But then, certain disciplines tend to be colder. So definitely bring some layers. Good question about the kayaks. So we will be assigning teams a category of boats. So you'll come in and the volunteers at the waterfront will say, hey, your team gets 1 tandem and 2 singles or something like that. So just listen to the staff there, and you will be able to choose your boat from among the boats kind of indicated to you. And our race partner, the Activity Shop, who's our boat provider, they're fantastic. Make sure you sign their waiver if you haven't yet. They are going to be fully sanitizing all of the boats and paddles and PFDs between uses. So the boats will be reused, but they will be sanitized.
Training pals, since we're kind of branching out now.
Sure.
If anyone has any other urgent questions, feel free to chat them to us. But we run the Strong Machine Development Squad. That's kind of gone a little dormant with COVID canceling most of the races this year, but it's a program we started this year to create a social group that is adventure racing focused and focused around beginners wanting to improve. So we did a bunch of Q&As through the winter, and a bunch of our team, kind of our more like our pro team, helped kind of guide discussions on gear and on strategy. And we're going to be reopening applications for that this winter. So if you're interested, definitely apply. It's open to adventure racers in the beginner to intermediate level, located in New England. So, so that's like Joe and Rob. Be good for you guys. But no, if that sounds interesting to you, just send us an email or just stay tuned for announcements to come once we get through this race. Yeah. But we have a good group. They're mostly based out of Boston right now, so that's good for training once we can train together again.
If we missed any questions, please go ahead and just type it in the chat. Hopefully we answered all the kind of main ones that people have. We'll hang on for another minute or two and then wind it down.
Anything else out there?
I think we did it.
A gravel bike. Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, as long as you're okay not getting all the points or walking towards most of the points. On the bike, I mean, if
there are some rugged rides out there.
Yeah, I would not ride the whole course if I were on a gravel bike, but you could certainly ride the basic part of the course, the minimum. Has a first-time team ever won? Depends on the division. I guess.
Overall, no.
No.
Like the overall winner has never been a first-time team.
Adventure racing is one of those sports where experience plays an outsized role in your success. So, yeah.
We are ready, Jake. We want to see it.
Yeah, let's do it. Bring it. Yeah, 3-hour race, you're much higher likelihood for first-time teams to win, and for 8-hour races, go for it. That's why it's called a race. All right.
Whoa.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We're so excited for this. It's gonna be our first race of the season, so make it happen. We really appreciate you guys all going through all the hoops and ladders we're putting you through to make this work. So thank you so much for your dedication and your excitement.
See you guys this weekend.
As Jake said, bring it. See you guys.